All right, I guess we'll get started. 7:03. Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Martin Chera. I'm from Express Capital Financing. We are real estate hard money lenders. And we have with us Anthony Marin from MIG Real Estate Property Management Company. We're going to be doing, Q&A, just talking about the real estate industry right now. How's it going? Anthony's going to share his insights and thoughts about the foreclosure moratorium and the eviction moratoriums. If anybody has joined, please understand this is only free, just advice, education. We are not CPAs. We are not attorneys. So please seek out your professionals out there. We're just giving our consultative ideas and best practices and thoughts about what we're sharing here for the real estate industry.
Nice, Marty. I can check that off. I don't have to do the disclaimer. You got it.
I got the disclaimer. No worries, no worries. And for everybody that is just joining in the last minute, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We will answer them like 15 minutes before the session is over. And Anthony Marin, you could start what you do and start going off.
Okay, so Marty, thank you very much. I want to just thank you and Express Capital Funding for inviting me here, and putting on such a good event on. I don't know, you do it monthly or weekly, but I know you do this often. So thank you for putting out good content that we all can get good information. So I just want to thank you for that, and again for inviting me. The next thing I want to do is thank the attendees for being here. Without you guys, then we wouldn't have an audience. So thank you guys. So my name is Anthony Marin. To just put things simply, I'm a real estate investor that started a property management company. And then after doing property management for 5-6 years, I just started a brokerage during the pandemic in 2020. And why did I do that? So I did that because as I started investing in small multifamily, so about 7-8 years ago, I started buying 2s and 3s in Newark while I still had a job. And I quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to stay in my full-time job and manage those properties at the same time if I wanted to scale my portfolio. So I went out there looking for a property manager, and it was tough. I just couldn't find a good manager. The big boys wanted too much money, and to be honest, they really didn't want to see you or talk to you unless you had a 50 to 100 unit portfolio. And then all the smaller managers, I just felt like they weren't going to take care of me in the way that I wanted to have my properties taken care of. So, I kept on self-managing, and from there, we just grew the portfolio. I realized how much I loved real estate. So I figured out a way to leave my job, keep on doing real estate full time, started property management. And then now, during the pandemic, got my broker's license and started a brokerage to not only just do the property management access, not just the property management. We want to do everything from beginning to end. So helping an investor acquire it all the way through renovation, and then through the management side of it, and even help. This is when Marty comes in. He helps you do that refinance, and at the end, you keep it. And between Express Capital Financing and MIG, we can help you from the beginning of acquisition all the way through the end. So that's the quick and dirty about me and my company. And Marty, I'll throw it back to you so we can get started.
Great. So what you're saying is that you're like a one-stop shop. You could help investors buy a property, sell a property. You could also help them manage their properties as well.
That's the game plan at the moment, right? That's where we should be in about another 6 to 12 months. I just started the brokerage. I haven't even hired an agent yet, right? So, one of the things I'm focused on is we want to make sure we hire good agents, good investor-friendly agents, and we all know those are really hard to find. So, we haven't hired any agents yet, but the game plan is to be that person and be that company that can help you from beginning to end, with good partners like lawyers, contractors, and bankers and brokers that can help us out throughout the process as well.
Of course. And for your, investors out there who are just starting out, hiring a property manager, some people are afraid, or they don't want to have that extra expense, but it's what is it, Anthony, like 5 to 7% of the rent roll? Am I saying it right? Something like that?
Well, it depends how large the property is, right? So our fees are from 1 to 4 units, it's 8%. 5 units to 19 unit building will charge 6 to 7%. And then anything 20 plus units, we're going to charge 4 to 5%.
Right.
And that's just scale. Right? If we can manage 30 units in one place, we're going to offer a discount. But, handling a 2-family property is a lot of work because,
Right.
and to be honest, the market is at 10% on
Right.
small multifamily.
Right. And my point is that, for investors out there, if you got no job, you got no business, then maybe you want to do it yourself. That's okay. But if you could handle phone calls coming in from tenants about sewer leaks and bathroom leaks and this leaks, that's where a good property manager comes in. They can maintain your property, keep you from not being in violation with the city ordinances or codes or things like that. And they're going to deal with all types of issues, especially right now with COVID, when you got eviction possible issues and new renting issues. So there's a value that comes into owning a property manager. They're going to handle all the aspects of your properties. And I just want to emphasize that to real estate investors, experienced people, I'm sure they use them because, they're buying acquisitions all day long. But the newbies out there who want to buy a property for the cash flow, forced depreciation, and whatever other, positive effects that they see buying a property. I just want to say personally that I also have property managers because I have multifamily properties in Texas, and being an out-of-state investor, I ain't going to fly there all the time. I don't take care of it. I look at the reports. We speak once a month, and that's the value that a property manager brings. Tell me if you have any
No,
other.
that's exactly it. And I mean, it's a topic for another webinar. But when is it a good time to get a property manager? Although it's not beneficial to me when a newbie comes along, he says, Anthony, I need a property manager. I'm of the opinion that you should manage your own at least for a little bit, get a taste of what all the moving parts are. So then when you do hire a property manager, you understand those things. I've had both sides of it. So I've had someone that they never managed the property and their expectations are a little unrealistic because they've never seen all the different things you have to handle. But yeah, that's that. I mean, we can get into the meat of what we came here for, but that's definitely a topic for another conversation when to hire a manager.
Great. So what are your thoughts now on the current status of the eviction moratorium that's going on now? And by the way, Anthony's only talking about Jersey because he specializes in North Jersey. So what are your thoughts? What are you hearing? What are you seeing out there?
So right now, I'm going to keep my opinions to myself, right? Because, I will save that for later. I have opinions. I have no problem giving them. But what I want to give to everyone here are the facts and where we are at the moment. So at the moment, the governor and the legislature has extended the eviction moratorium to December 31st. That is the current status right now. So you cannot evict your tenants no matter how much rent they owe at the moment. You can evict them for non-payment of rent. There are other ways, and maybe we'll get into this later. You can evict tenants for other things, but you cannot evict them for non-payment of rent until December 31st.
Even if they have a good job?
Well, that's what I'm getting to next, right? So right now, there are some legislators that are working on legislation along with the New Jersey Apartment Association, the Property Owners Association, and they're trying to put together a bill that would end the moratorium sooner. But along with ending the moratorium sooner, there'll be some guidelines as to who you can evict and who you cannot evict. So what's the first thing in this legislation they're working on? So they want to move it up to August 31st. So if this, and I just want to make sure I'm explaining this right, this is not happening yet. They're negotiating this bill, and then hopefully this is something that will get passed in the near future. But where it's at the moment is that the eviction moratorium will end on August 31st. But it will only end for people making 80% or more of AMI, and that's the average median income. So New Jersey's average median income right now is I looked it up earlier, 81,740, right? So 80% of that number is a little bit over $65,000. So if this legislation passes, anyone making more than $65,000 and they haven't paid their rent, you can evict those people
after August
31st. But there is a catch. So anyone making less than 65,000, that moratorium is pretty much going to stay till December 31st. So if they're low income, you still can't evict them. If they're high income, you can start evicting those people on August 31st. The next thing is, this is kind of the tricky one too. So when you're going to evict these tenants, you can't evict them for any rent due prior to August 31st. So all the rent that's owed pre-August 31st, that will automatically convert to civil debt. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's not rent owed, it's just regular debt. So they still owe you that debt and you can go after them. You go after them with a money judgment. And this is when you need to contact an attorney. You want to hire an attorney and you want to go after those individuals with a money judgment. But if this legislation passes, you cannot evict anyone that owes rent pre-August 31st. Now, if they don't pay their rent in September, so by September 5th, 6th, that's when you can start filing eviction on anyone that hasn't paid rent past September 1st.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is from March, when COVID happened, until September, that rent now becomes a civil debt. How do you make a judgment out there when there's no, really it's owed for rent?
And that's what it is. It's pretty much like, someone owes you money. You lent them $15,000 and they didn't pay you. So now you can go after them just like you would go after anyone that owes you regular civil debt. So you hire an attorney and you go and do that.
So it would not be landlord tenant court.
It would not be you cannot evict them. So you can't evict them. You have to, they stay. So here's the thing. They stay in your apartment. They owe you those X amount of dollars, and then you file a civil judgment against them.
Interesting. Okay. Very good.
And there's just two more. So here's the other thing. I have my list of things in this, the top 3 or 4 things, but the other thing you can't do. So let's say they owe you $25,000. You can't, there's credit protection. You can't get a third party or a debt collector. You can't give that debt to a debt collector to go get them. And the other thing is you cannot ruin their credit as well. You can't put their debt you can't put your debt on their credit. So all these protections are in this law. So they're trying to resolve it so that it works for both sides. But in my opinion, it's one-sided.
It's more favorable for the tenant.
But if it's a tenant that's making over X amount of dollars, you do begin to start having some recourse. But whatever's there, it's stuck, and you're going to have to figure out a way to work with that.
So for the tenant that's making 80% or more of that median income, but if they didn't pay during COVID, March, April, May, and June, do the landlord have any recourse against the old debt, or they're still the same fashion?
Same thing,
same way.
Judgment.
Same way.
So you file the money judgment, and you try and get it that way. But again, it's you trying to work with them. What I think they're trying to do is encourage you having a conversation, a dialogue with your tenant. Okay, listen, this is a situation now. You owe me X dollars. How are we going to work this out? You can't go after them with a debt collect. You can't go after their credit, but you can hire an attorney and it'll be a civil debt. So you can go after them with it. But what New Jersey is trying to avoid is that what everyone's worried about, right? That eviction tsunami, right? So that literally takes that off the table. If you can't file for eviction on anyone that owes you rent up until August 31st, all those evictions that are in the courts right now, they're garbage. Throw them out. Then we start starting September 1st.
Wow, that's crazy. That's going to affect the real estate industry tremendously if it happens. We shouldn't say if it happens, if it doesn't happen. Got it. Okay.
It's going to happen either way, right? So either they don't do this and we wait till the 31st, and then we have the big problem, right? No one did anything. We're going to have the tsunami. We're going to have more debt. This at least, it gives, at least you know the rules and you could try to figure out your way through it. And I think that's, well, at least me as an investor, that's what I need. I need to know the rules. I need to know what my game is so I can plan accordingly. With this extension month, I didn't know what to do.
Right. And by the way, folks, this is why hiring a professional, whether it's a CPA, a real estate investor, attorney, and a property manager can, put you in the right steps without getting hurt. Because if you don't have these professionals on your team, you're going to get hurt and spend more dollars than what you're already, God forbid, losing. So, Anthony, how does a landlord in today's times, how do they file an eviction right now with delinquent tenants?
So that's a conversation we've had with our landlords throughout, right? Literally from the beginning of this pandemic, the biggest back and forth I've had with our clients is, should we file for eviction? Should we file? When should we file? And to be honest, even until right now, all it is pushing paper, right? So you're going to pay an attorney just to file. And the only argument for that was, I want to get in line. because they know this is going to happen. Like, I want to get in line, because you would think that they're going to handle it, numerically, right? Whoever filed first is going to go see the judge first. Well, with this legislation, it seems like that didn't matter. So what we were telling our clients is, let's hold, let's wait to see what's going to happen, how this all shakes out, because why pay an attorney to push paper when maybe we can figure this out a different way? And it looks like that was the right way to go, because everyone that put in for eviction, it's just going to get thrown out. It is literally just going to get thrown out. And what they owe you now turns into a civil debt, and that gets thrown out. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, you can't file for eviction. And what I'll say is that you want to try to work with your tenants. I mean, I've said this since day one. The only tenants we've really had issues with are the tenants we got within the last 3 or 4 months pre-COVID. Those are the tenants we weren't able to build a relationship with, right? We weren't able to get some back and forth, some conversation. Every tenant, once you bring them in, they're always a little standoffish, right? Landlords and managers have to earn their trust, right? And that's something we're working on usually for the first 3 to 6 months. It's a good back and forth.
That's true. Very true.
So that's something we didn't get to have. And those were the tenants that we had the most issues with, were the ones that just got in December, January, and February, of 19 and 20. So,
Right.
I agree. I'll leave it off on this. I agree with whatever the administration wants to encourage dialogue, but the dialogue, we're literally fighting probably with both hands behind our back, right? You want us to have a dialogue, but there's zero recourse. So I'm literally knocking on doors saying, hi, are you going to pay rent? They go, no, and they close it, and I can't do anything about it. So, I'm just hoping that something gets done so that there's some reason. And if the recourse is a money judgment, then the recourse is a money judgment. I mean, at least, if they don't pay September, then we start going back to somewhat normal.
I hear you. Just on a personal level, my thinking was all this money that they gave out, it should have went not to the tenant, it shouldn't have gone to the landlord, it should have went directly to the banks who are owed the money for these mortgages. This way, nobody would get hurt, not the tenant, not the landlord, not even the banks. But everybody just kept this money for themselves. That was, my personal feeling, that it just hurt the economy. Gotcha.
So with that's a good point. So that's always how I thought they were going to resolve this, right? I literally thought they would take all those evictions. There's so much money. I mean, there's so much money at the state and federal level. I thought they would just make all the landlords whole and just get this over with, but they obviously didn't do that. But there is a lot of money in rental assistance right now. There's a lot. So anyone on this call that hasn't applied for the New Jersey State rental assistance, and your tenants owe any rent, you should apply. You should definitely.
As a landlord.
You can apply as a landlord.
Right.
But you do need. So here's the way you have to do it in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you go to a website, and what we can do is we'll put the link in here so they can get that link and apply. But it's an initial application. So you put your name, your address, the tenant's names. You need their social. So you need to have their information, and that's a pre-qualification. Once you put in that pre-qualification, then they'll contact you back and get all the other information. And it has to be a back and forth with you and the tenant. So that's another thing. I mean, if you have zero communication, then it's hard for you to get this rental assistance. But if you did maintain communication, you both fill out this application together. You as the landlord give it in, and that check does go directly to the landlord.
Is it the 100% of the rent, or is it a certain percentage of it?
So you can apply for all rent owed from March through current, and you can go 3 months ahead. So you can, but the state is only going to pay the back rent first. So after they handle all the back rent, if there's money left over, then they'll start paying future rent as well. So that's what I think the resolution is for, like that. The people that are making less than the 80% AMI, that's how they fix those people, because you can't file for eviction on them until the 31st. So I think they have a way. They're going to ask for how much money they make and all their financials. So that's how I think they're going to resolve those people, is to pay the landlords that have those tenants in the apartments.
Right. So just want to clarify for the folks out there, you're saying there is a link for landlords to apply for their tenants so they can get either partial rent or full rent. some of my friends who are landlords also, and I'm sure you'll agree with this one, Anthony, is they're working with their tenants, whether they're a property manager or a landlord, give me 50%. We'll take the arrears and we'll get it 12 months later, or we'll divide, we'll divide 2019's rent, 2020 rent over 2022 rent. You got to make concessions out there, make things work with your tenants. If you're just going to fight them and be aggressive, not only will they not pay, they're just going to make it only harder and harder. And you're going to have to evict them in 2023, and you're going to have a lot of costs to get them out. Not just for the eviction costs, but I'm sure you're going to have a lot of repairs just to get them out also. So
Marty,
those are things.
We were playing a huge game of let's make a deal for the past 18 months. It's talking to them, this, can you do this? Can you do that? It's been a huge game of that. And to be quite honest, the ones that are only, and I'm saying only because people are behind 18 months. To the tenants that are only 1 to 3 months behind, those are the ones we're really, really working with, because they're trying, they're paying something, we're working with them, they're paying, and the communication is open. Those are the ones even through 2022, we'll still work with them because they've worked with us that entire time. Right. There's a middle section of people that, they owe more than 3 months. Some of them are communicating, some of them are not, some of them are helping you with rent. So that middle one is where you have to make decisions, right? Which ones you're gonna really stick with and work with, and which ones you're gonna have to try to figure out what to do with them. The ones that owe, 6 months or more and they're not communicating, you know what's gonna happen. You're gonna either money judgment, try to do whatever. And I guess this is a good time to talk about like what kind of resources you have, or what can you do to try to get them out, right?
Right. Yeah, that was my next question. What does a landlord do? What are his options to get non-paying tenants out?
So, the only thing that's worked for us is cash for keys. So, you knock on the door and hopefully they answer and say, listen, you owe me $10,000. The landlord is willing to pay you, $3,000. He'll forgive the $10,000. He'll pay you $3,000 if you can be out by the end of the month. In the beginning, it didn't work at all. It didn't matter. Within the past, 3-4 months, we have seen some success with it. We've gotten a few tenants out, and landlords are willing to do it. I would be willing to do it.
It's cheaper to pay that than go through the eviction process, of course.
It's definitely cheaper. You might as well pay to get them out, because again, and at that point, within the past 3 months, you didn't know when this was going to end, right? So, at least it's December 31st, but that's still months away. So
right.
Could be. And then the other thing is putting the property up for sale. We did that. We put a property up for sale during the pandemic. One of the tenants wasn't paying. We had to sell it at a discount, but that made more sense for us because we bought it at a good price. And even at the discount, we'd walk away, but it's the same thing. You could keep on banging your head trying to collect rent from this tenant or resolve this issue, or you could try cash for keys, or you could just put it on the market and try to sell it. All the other ways past that, you really can't. Here's something I want to say too. Here are a few things you cannot do. You cannot shut their water off. You cannot cut their gas. You cannot cut their electric. You cannot do any of those things. And we've had clients saying, Anthony, how do we make it difficult on them? I'm like, nothing. We're not doing anything like that. So we're not making it difficult. We're gonna play within the rules.
Gotta play within the rules. That's it. The landlords will get in trouble more than they will. You know what I'm saying? It's funny. On a side note, you can go in a plane full of people, bus full of people, train full of people, but yet now there's still so many guidelines and, like you said, regulations. For what? People are working. Thank God they're working. People are working. Maybe not to full capacity, but they're working. People that are truly hurt, they should definitely work it out with their landlords, but that's a different topic and all in its own.
I can't understand why emergency protocols that were put in at the height of this, that's when these were put in, and those same emergency protocols are still going through December. I don't understand it. The administration has their reasons for doing things, and they're privy to, again, the other side, they're privy to more data than I am. So maybe there are valid reasons, and there are professionals that are making these decisions. But when I weigh the pros and cons, I just don't see why. There has to be a better way. And at least, the New Jersey Apartment Association, the POA, and some legislators are really trying to figure out a way that works for both sides to get this ended. So hopefully that works. And really quickly, I don't want to go through this without saying it. the people here on this webinar could help the situation by reaching out to your local legislators. So reach out, everyone has 2 assembly people and 1 senator. You reach out to your local assembly people and senators and say, hey, let's get this legislation done. I hope you're voting on it. Find out where they stand on it. Talk to them about it. I mean, that's what they're there for. They're your local representatives. So reach out to them and just say, hey, what's going on with this? Where is it at? How are you helping the small urban landlord that's getting crushed? Because to be frank, in this whole situation, I know there's a lot of people but the person that got adversely hit the most during this pandemic is the urban landlord, the urban small landlord. They got crushed.
Especially like New York, California, San Francisco. Yeah.
Newark, Patterson, Camden, same thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary out there. So, I mean, why don't you tell the folks what's the benefits, maybe the pros and, of hiring a property manager, even though I kind of expounded on it, they take care of all your headaches. They're not going to have phone calls from tenants. The rules, the regulations, the guidelines, what to collect, what not to collect. You mentioned you don't want to go through any illegal actions. You want to be careful for your landlords, which is a good thing, and I'm sure most property managers do. But is there anything you want to share with our guest on this webinar? What are the positive aspects of hiring a property manager besides what I expounded on?
Sure. And really quickly, I just noticed Katie, who works for me, she put the link in the chat box for the New Jersey State rental assistance.
Okay.
So anyone who wants to get that done, definitely use that link. And there are, and I'll answer your question in a minute, Marty, but this is actually important as well. So the new state of New Jersey got rental assistance money from the feds. Some counties got rental assistance funds from the feds, and 2 cities in New Jersey got federal funding for rental assistance, and that was Newark and Jersey City. So if you have properties in obviously the state, you want to apply there, you should want to find out if your county got federal funds, because you can apply. It's a separate bucket. You can apply there as well. You apply at the state, you apply at the county level, and if you have property in Jersey City or Newark, you apply at the city level as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you can get money from all 3, but it gives you a better chance of getting money, right? Once you get from one, you cannot accept money from one of the other ones, but you're better off trying to go 1 for 3 instead of 1 for 1. So if you leave your email in the chat, Katie and I will get the links for Newark and Essex County, because we were working on that today, but we couldn't get it. We weren't able to get it in time for the webinar. But if you leave your email in the chat, we'll send you the links for Essex County and Newark. And so, yeah, we'll do that for you.
So landlords can apply at the county and at the city level. And what was the third thing?
So you have the state, you have the county, and you have the city level. But only certain counties got funding. So you want to find out if your county got funding first. Like I know Hudson County got, I know Essex County got. I'm not sure what other counties got. And of the 2 cities, only 2 cities got funding from the feds, and it was Newark and Jersey City.
And this is for landlords to apply, not for tenants.
Both can apply. Landlords or tenants can apply. That was one of the changes of this last one, that they allowed landlords to apply.
Right. So are you telling the tenants also, hey, we could help you. Here's a link. I'll do it with you, for you. We'll help you get this. This way you don't have to be in the arrears. You won't have a civil judgment against you. I'm sure this will help your cash flow with your properties. Am I right?
Yeah, so that's what we did the first time around, because you as a landlord, you couldn't apply. The tenant was the only one that could. So once we saw the first round of funding, we tried to work with them to get them to apply and hold their hand through the process. Obviously successful with some and not successful with others. One of the biggest things that was a change positive for us as landlords was that now landlords could apply for this round of funding. So the good thing is if you were a good landlord and you got all the information up front, such as social security numbers, copies of IDs and those things, then you don't even need the tenant to do the pre-application. But once they select you, they're gonna ask for a lot more. You'll need tax returns, you need to see W-2s. They wanna see everything this time around. So now it's you and the tenant have to work together to get that funding.
And the tax returns is the tenant or the landlord?
No, the tenant.
The
They want to
tenant,
know what
okay.
the tenant's been making. They
it,
want
got
to, they want to make sure that they deserve it, and well, yeah, they deserve this money.
Got it. Got it. Okay, very good. Anything else you want to expound on this before we go to the next thing?
No, I think that's it for that. Yeah, I
That's
think
it.
we kind
Okay.
of beat
Great,
we kind of
great,
beat
great.
that dead horse, but it is
Got it.
important. It is
Got
definitely
it.
important.
Got it. Okay.
There's a lot of struggling landlords out there right now.
There is, and my opinion as a lender is that I hate to say this, but we haven't even hit first base yet. In my own language, I say shit hasn't hit the fan yet, because once the foreclosure moratoriums are over and the evictions are over, it's going to be a 1 to 5 year ride of this happening.
So that's a good point. So Marty, that's a really good point. So, and this will help me out. What is different now after COVID, or after all the situation that we're going through and almost in? What's different from a lending perspective? What should landlords be thinking about now when we're applying for loans?
Well, I mean, a lot of landlords are, believe it or not, they're looking to refi their properties. They know that cash is king, whether they just want to have it in their pocket or buying, more properties as opportunity comes up. I'm always of the mindset that uncertainty brings opportunity, and that opportunity, it's happening, but it's going to happen more so once these moratoriums are over with. You know, the larger landlords, like you're mentioning, they have a larger portfolio. Well, they may not get hurt because they're cash rich, but like you're saying, the guys that have 2, 3, 4, maybe even 10 properties,
Yeah,
they're
and
hurting.
with that real quick, like they also got PPP loans because they have employees, and so that's why they were taken care of. It's the smaller landlords that got
To smaller landlords, they're going to get hurt. And
Mhm.
like I tell some of my investors, look on Craigslist for properties. And I also say, look at the renter section. And they say, but Marty, I want to buy a property. I said, now look at the renter section, because those landlords that are hurting, they can't afford to pay a broker a fee. And that's how you're going to get a motivated landlord to sell your property, when you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, look, I'm not looking to rent, I'm looking to buy. And, those are possible ways of getting property leads.
It's a good place to find property management clients too, because they're probably not too happy having to deal with all of that.
So I just gave you one of my secrets. That's what I share with my investors. I mean, look, it's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. I mean, good thing I'm noticing as a lender is that, listen, we've lowered our rates, which is good. We've increased our leverage. During the pandemic, March and April, we were closed. We actually paused everything. And then May or June, we opened up again. Now all the lenders are back in. Why? Because we see, like I said, that there's so much opportunity to be had. If lenders are coming in and they're lending at such cheap money and all that, obviously that's a good reason. Even though prices are high, it's still a good reason to lend, because there's just so much opportunity to be had. You never buy high. You always want to buy low and sell high, and that's the good thing. But I want to mention to the folks out there sometimes, and Anthony, I'm sure you agree with me as an investor, a lot of my investors are saying, oh, Marty, I got outbidded by 10 or 20%. And I say to them, what's the purchase price? 200 grand. So let me ask you a question. You got outbidded by, $20,000. What is your opinion, Anthony, an appreciation every year that's happening right now? What is your opinion?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I think it depends where you're investing, right?
Okay,
If you're investing in quality areas where there's quality tenants,
yes.
I think the point you're trying to make is that paying up a little more makes sense, because if you're gonna hold it long term, that 10, 20,000 extra, if it's in a good location, there are quality tenants there, it's okay to pay that extra 10, 20,000. If you're looking to flip it, then maybe that's something different, right? Because that's different.
Right.
But
yeah, because as an investor of buy and holds, like I tell my clients, you're buying it for 200,000. So you don't want to go up 20,000, but an appreciation is anywhere from 5 to 15%. So let's use a middle number, 10%. That property is going to be worth 220 next year. So if you pay 20 grand more, you're in control. You got forced depreciation, you got appreciation, and then you got you got that rent roll coming in, and most importantly, you could leverage it in a few years and buy more properties with it. I mean, tell me it's a 50% increase.
The
then
real answer to that, it depends on the numbers, right? If you're a cash flow investor,
of course,
it depends on if you can go up 20 grand and your cash flow still looks good, then you do it that. If you're a cash on cash investor, you go up 20, 30 and your cash on cash is still good. That's a personal question, but I agree with you. You shouldn't just look at it as like, oh, 10, 20 grand more or 10% more. You should do your numbers, see where you are, and then you make those decisions accordingly.
Exactly. Numbers don't lie, emotions do, but people are getting emotional. Oh, I got outbidded. And I said, because you're not running your numbers to seeing if it's worth it. And just talking about a quick flip, by the way, if you're instead of making 60,000, but you're going to make 30,000 on a flip, what's wrong with $30,000, 2 or 3 times a year also. So, people have to,
no one ever went broke hitting singles and doubles, right? Everyone's looking for the home run. You get a home run every now and again, but you're not going to get a home run every time. You hit singles and doubles all day long, and then when the home run comes, you got to take advantage of that as well. But no, I really agree. I agree.
Exactly.
So what do you think? How are things tightening up from a lending perspective, or are things loosening back up? Is it crazy now? How do you feel about that part of it as far as how loose the lending market is?
So, I mean, I'm lending on both sides, permanent and hard money. And by the way, for the folks that don't know what hard money is, it's short term, 12 months. It provides you high leverage, for a fix and a flip. And for the permanent side also. So COVID on the permanent side, believe it or not, we were like 6-7% on the permanent, financing. Now, thank God, we're in the high 4s, very low 5s on a 30-year fix. So yeah, the leverage has definitely increased. Rates are decreasing. The Feds are talking about a rate increase in 2023. If that's true, that's great. That's going to keep the economy stable. So that's a good thing to know. But we're headed for inflation. So that's another aspect also on its own too. Inflation is in a way, it's good, I think, for the real estate market. What are your thoughts on that?
I think inflation is one of those things that people talk about it a lot, but it depends. Again, everything depends with me. I'm very specific into what I'm looking like. If milk costs a little more, you're going to have to adjust to the milk costing more. I mean, if you own assets, this is the way I think. I'm an asset owner. I'm an investor. So if you own assets that are appreciating, inflation is great because your assets are going higher and higher. So at the end of the day, if you're buying quality assets, you're not worried about inflation because you're going to win at the end of the day. That's how I see inflation.
And that creates more renters because they can't afford to buy the houses, and that creates more wealth for landlords. That's what's good. That's what I like about it. Got you. So, Anthony, how is a management and being a landlord changing this pandemic? Like, what's changing with a landlord during this pandemic with his management and being a property manager as well?
So the biggest change, and this is a change that's going to stay for a while, and it's landlords and managers, but more landlords because they felt this situation. The screening process for tenants went way up. I had clients that would, they would be passive. What do you think? Oh yeah, just let them in. Those days are gone. Right. They want to make sure, what's their credit? Do they have any evictions? What job do they have? How much? We are being super specific on tenant screening, to the point where, there are some tenants where I'm like, you have to have intuition, right? You do this long enough, you think like this person's good, but you know what? Their credit score is a little low, and if you look through the credit, you'll see maybe it's student loans, maybe it was medical debt. So you're like, you know what? I would let this tenant in, but at the end of the day, it's on the owners. As a manager, you're going to make sure the owners have to say yes. So, and we've had owners that said, no, we're not budging. I'll eat a month. They have no problem eating a month because some of them are eating a lot of months, so they don't want to get back in that situation. They'll eat a month with no problem just to make sure that they're getting a quality tenant. And that's going to make things tougher on some of the lower income tenants trying to get new housing after this whole thing. It's going to be tough on them because the requirements are still there, and they're even higher. And to go back to this legislation, that reminded me of something else that's in there. In this legislation, you can't hold an eviction against the tenant within that March 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. So that entire time frame, right? If the tenant has everything else passes your requirements, but they have an eviction within that time, you can't deny them. You can't. You have to literally look the other way and you have to accept it because, again, they would have to know that, but that's a part of the legislation. You cannot hold evictions against them.
And I was at a RIA recently and I heard somebody saying that you can't even do a background check on them until they're actually approved by you. Where the old way was you could do a credit and background first, but they have to fill in an application, get approved, and then you're allowed to do it. And you can't even reject them because of that. It has to be some other valid reason. So it is making it harder for landlords, I think.
Right. So that's another piece of legislation that they're working on. It's a tenant screening legislation on when you can do background checks, who you can say yes or no to. And once you start getting these really tough guidelines, one thing I take pride in as a manager is that I'm a people person. I don't have any real, the attorneys are going to go crazy right now if we have any, because property management and being a landlord it's an art, not a science. You can't just be rigid and say, I need this credit score, I need this, yes. And if they have this, you can't be a successful landlord or manager that way. You have your guidelines and that's kind of, the bounds where you stay inside of. But I've broken my rules many times because of the feeling I get from this person or the conversation or, whatever, maybe I'm having a good day and we give somebody a chance, all those things, it happens. Right. And if I'm being super honest, yes, sometimes that has bitten me in the ass, but more often, I mean, like 95% of the time, that always works out because the person you give an opportunity to, they appreciate you for it. So remember that skepticism that you have to work through in the beginning, some of that goes away because if they already know that you took care of them, because they know that they really shouldn't have gotten this apartment, but you said, listen, I'm going to give you a shot. So that already that subsides a little bit and you start off on a good note, but you're going to put hey, you gotta be good because, you just can't and that's one thing I always say, property management is an art, not a science. You got to have guidelines, but you can't stick to them. And, the attorneys go crazy, but it's just, if you want to be successful, you got to have a heart. You got to know when to say yes, when to say no, and when to work with somebody.
Right. It's true. And it's funny you mentioned that because you said a people person, and it's very important for newbies out there. I'm not saying if you're not a people person, you won't succeed, but you got to be a people person because you got to bend. You're going to get a lot of different personal character traits from people when you're working with tenants. And, I, for one, when I was a landlord years ago on small properties and I was in Mexico and I got a call at 10 o'clock at night about the toilet, man, I wanted to kill the guy. I couldn't wait to evict. I couldn't wait to evict him.
That's when you say I need a property manager. That's usually when
that's exactly why I hire a property manager. And I don't know if everybody remembers in 2001 when the World Trade Center, we got hit and all that. Right after that, we had the anthrax. And one of my property managers called me up. I had a property in Newark on South 17th Street. He called me up and he goes, don't answer for your phones if anybody calls you. I says, what do you mean? He goes, remember that anthrax threat all over? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, there's a tenant here that's claiming that you put anthrax in the grass and her kid got infected and all that. And I said to myself, thank God I hired a property manager because I couldn't handle phone calls like that. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Got you. All right.
Marty, really quick, and I can't believe it took me this long to remember this. You remember we did a refinance right before COVID. We closed that refinance. We did 2 properties refinanced. Right. And we literally, I remember it being tough because it was a tough approval process going back and forth to what needed. And thank God we got it done, I think in the second or third week of February, when the rumblings of the virus had already started. And I remember we got it done. And I spoke to you about a month later. He said, you told me I'll never. I
texted you.
I said, Anthony, you are so lucky.
That's it.
Because that deal is gone. And not only that, the people that were almost done, they literally pulled the rung right onto them, right? They just killed the program right there.
In May, we were at 50, 60% leverage at 7 to 8% rates. So you would, yeah, thank God you came just in time.
That was huge. And
Just
it
in
was huge
time.
for us too. Like that cash at
Yes,
that time
yes,
was big for
yes,
us.
yes. So
But
what
yeah, man,
Anthony's saying, I'm sorry, go ahead, Anthony, I'm
no, I
sorry.
was just saying that thank you, because I needed that at that time, and good thing it didn't last another
Appreciate that.
week.
And by the way, so that's what I'm happy to say is that networking is an opportunity to grow. What's the opportunity? Meeting the right people by growing, by calling, emailing, like Anthony said after this event, email, call all your networking people, whether it's me for my company, Anthony, anybody else you're meeting at webinars and seminars. That's the most important thing to grow your wealth in real estate. So with that said, we're ready to wrap it up. We are a few questions, Anthony, so I'm going to repeat these questions to you and see what they are.
Go ahead.
Let me see. So somebody is asking, is the 65,000 total household income?
It is. That's a great question. I think though, see, a lot of those details are what they're really negotiating. So I don't want to say something and not know, but that's a good question. That's something that would have to be figured
Well, you were
out.
saying that the median income was 80,000, so 80% of that is like 64, 65K. So that would be
Yeah, I don't know if that's for a married couple or if that's both of them. So it would be double that. That's a great question, and I'm honest. Again, I don't,
okay.
I don't know.
Got you. Okay. Another person's asking, although eviction can't be sought prior to end of year, can landlords seek a civil money judgment at any point for money owed?
It's a great question. So yes, and you can do that right now. So those courts are open. Those money, and I should have said this before, that's something that slipped my mind. Money judgments are available right now. So if there's a tenant that owes you a lot of money, get that money judgment in. Get that money judgment in and start the clock. They'll get a letter. I mean, are they going to pay? I don't know, right? Because again, if they let it get this bad, but whenever you get a letter from an attorney, it scares people. So if a tenant owes you a significant amount of money, you should put the money judgment. And these money judgments are in 3 categories. And again, don't quote me on this. I'm not an attorney, but I think from 0 to 5,000, you're at the small claims court. From 5,000 to 14,999, it's like the middle. If they owe more than 15,000, that's the highest money judgment. Once you get above 15,000, if you're there and you have no communication and things are bad between you and that tenant, you should call an attorney and begin the process of a money judgment.
Awesome. Okay, great. Let me see if there's any more questions for anybody. Can you discuss other reasons how tenants can be evicted besides money owed?
So they're asking what other options to get a tenant out besides eviction?
Basically, if can other reasons how a tenant can be evicted besides money owed. So basically, can a tenant?
Right. I understand the question now. So besides rent for non-payment, what other ways can you evict a tenant? Great question.
Yes,
so if they're wrecking your property, right? So if there's legitimate damage to your property that they're causing, you can prove that they're causing it, that's grounds for an eviction. If they're violent towards you or towards any of the other residents, that's ground for an eviction. And those are the 2 big ones that I know are being granted if they're wrecking the place, their apartment or common areas or the outside of the property, and if they're being violent towards you, the landlord, the manager, or other tenants, those have been granted in eviction court recently. And there's a specific way and there's specific language that your eviction attorney has to put it in. And again, just make sure you got a good eviction attorney that works within that county. But those are being granted.
Great. So he's saying if they're, I guess, harmful to the landlord or the property manager, how about if they're loud? How about if they're loud and dirty and things like that?
I don't think they're grant. It has to be like an imminent, like it has to be a really big problem, pretty much. I mean, you have loud tenants. I don't think the judge is going to really grant that in this. Or I haven't seen it happen, I should say. I had a conversation with an attorney that's really involved with this, and he said those are the 2 big ones that have been granted. Pretty much everything else, the judges are just not convinced that that's important enough right now in the middle of a pandemic.
And that's landlord tenant, or that's
Yeah,
separate?
landlord tenant. Yeah, you
Oh,
go, so you can evict normal process landlord tenant if they're doing those two things. But there's a specific phrase, a specific way that you have to do it. And any eviction attorney would know how to go forward with it. But
gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha,
but
gotcha.
you don't want to put anything as far as payment. You don't put anything as far as payment at all. Just make sure they're being either harmful to you, the manager, or other tenants, or if they're really like damaging the property.
Got it, got it. Okay. Any more questions from anybody out there? We got a few minutes more. Nobody? Okay. So just to repeat, my name is Martin Chera. My company is Express Capital Financing. I put my website address on the attendees chat, my phone number there. Perhaps Anthony, if you want to put your information there for any of our attendees to reach out to you, any questions and all that. Feel free to call us, either one, me or him. What I specialize is in hard money. I'm nationwide, and I also do permanent financing, any city, any state, any property type, just not a owner occupied primary. That's the only thing I don't touch. Rates are low, leverage is high, and Anthony's here to help you invest as a realtor and guide you with your property management. Like he said, maybe you should get your feet wet. Would you also maybe shadow? Would you shadow? Let's say if somebody didn't want to hire you yet, but they wanted to maybe use you as a
Yeah,
consultant, would
no,
you
that's
do
a great
that?
point. We've done that before. So we help out, and it's like some owners, they like, listen, I know I'm going to want a property manager, but I do want to see what goes on initially. So they'll come around initially, see how things are going, see what we think needs to be done. So we'll do walkthroughs together. We'll kind of tour the property in the beginning to say, these are the things I think you should do. This is what we're going to do here. These are the types of tenants we're going to look for. Yeah, no, we do that. We're a really landlord investor friendly. I'm there, I've been there. So, there was a time when I really knew nothing, and it was people like you in the financing or other investors that were helping me. So, I enjoy, having calls with new landlords and new investors, and with older ones too. I mean, veterans. I mean, I learned something new every day. I was actually talking to a new investor today, and she mentioned something about heated garages. I didn't, you can get a heated garage. She's like, yeah, for people that don't want to shovel snow, you can have, and I don't mean garage, I mean heated driveway.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, heated
Sidewalks.
driveways.
Okay.
And I'm like, to me, I mean, listen, I'm not big on swinging a hammer. I don't do any kind of, handyman stuff. I hire out for everything, but I do clean my own snow for my house. So I'm like, wait a minute, I can get a heated driveway? That sounds amazing to me. So, and she told me that, and it was a call with the new investor. So, we can all learn. So if there's anything we can do to help you out, whether it's from investing, property management, anything about Newark, that's what we are. That's where we live. We that's anything in reference to that. Katie, would you mind putting our phone number in, and you can put my email directly there if they want to email me directly. And,
Just a
or a
quick,
link to the Calendly too. We can put that in there.
okay, and just a quick 2-minute, what are your thoughts about the real estate market with its current conditions now in New Jersey?
So that's the interesting one, right? I'll be honest. I'm gonna say it, I'm a little nervous. I'm definitely not pushing when it comes to, as an investor, I'm not pushing to do anything that really, it has to make great sense for me to do it. I actually had 11 units under contract that we had to back out of recently because, and it was in our backyard. It was the Ironbound section of Newark. I love the Ironbound. They were good buildings, but we kind of got news about some tax situation and some other things that came up, material information that, maybe 3 or 4 years ago that we could have worked our way through. But right now, I really think we're somewhere here at the top. And whether we turn over next month, next year, 3 years, I'm not sure. I haven't gone through the cycle yet to really know. I just know from speaking to people that have gone through a couple cycles that we're at the top somewhere. We don't know where it's going to go. So for me to take on those buildings, knowing that there's this adverse thing coming pretty quickly, it didn't make sense for us. So we had to back out of those deals. And those are buildings I would have loved to own.
What is your adverse thoughts? Like, what is your adverse, what do you feel, what is it? What do you-
So in Newark
Is it the
specifically,
cap rate or is the market
no,
or
it was
something?
more about the taxes. So, in Newark, they're doing a tax assessment in 2023, but not only we've heard, we've gotten some really good information from investors that I know that have been through this, that Newark, if a building like a larger commercial building or a larger multifamily comes in, and it's assessed right now at 300,000 and someone buys it at 1.2. So the city of Newark looks at that and like, wow, there's a big difference there. So we should be getting taxed at this. So they'll do what's called a special assessment. And next thing you know, 3-4 months later, you're getting hit with this huge tax bill. So you buy something at 1.2, and we all know, I shouldn't say we all know, when you do large multifamily, your price and the value of that property depends on your cash flow. So the minute your tax bill goes higher, that property you bought for 1.2 is now worth 900,000 because your expenses just got that much higher. So
this is definitely it definitely is past legislation, or it's in
no. That's the thing. It's not something that they're always doing, but it's just not a risk I'm willing to take right now.
Okay. So it's
if
a case by
we were
case.
somewhere else in the cycle, then I'd be willing to take that risk. But right now, I'm just not willing to take that risk, along with maybe the market turning over and things just going down on top of that, right? So, if you got 2 or 3 headwinds, you're better off backing up. And I may regret it. I may look past that building in a year or two and, be very angry at myself for not getting it, but,
Got it. But is that a case by case, or that's like every purchase?
It's not every, I don't think it affects smaller multifamily. I don't think it affects things that are, it was going to be a huge difference in our perspective. So, it made sense on that specific deal. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, stay away from Newark. That's not the case. It's in certain specific situations where those properties are being targeted.
Got it. Anthony, I'll leave you off with one more question from a gentleman, Bachlan Grant. He's asking, are there any additional tips for landlords besides emergency rental assistance program? It appears that everything here is more tenant friendly. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the money judgment you have cash for keys. And I mean, it sounds silly, but I mean, just trying to level with them, really trying to level with the tenants. Like, listen, what's it going to take? Just ask them that open-ended question. What is it going to take for you to leave? I'm really struggling. I can't afford to keep you here anymore. Is there a number I can give you so you can find? I mean, listen, I understand the majority of those conversations probably won't go nowhere, but you never know. You should try it.
Some of my friends, what they do is they get to their pain points. What are you looking to do? Are you looking to move to Florida? You're looking to move to a different state? I could help you find that place. Maybe I'll pay the first 2 months rent in your new place even.
That's a
Something
good one.
like that. Yeah. So find their pain points, and this way, hopefully you can get to it. Like Anthony said, an open-ended question, or are you looking to move to a different state, a different city? Do you want to be next to your family? Perhaps I could help you find a unit for you, maybe even a home. Maybe they want to move into a home and they got the money, but they just don't want to pay you the rent. But what do you care? Just find their pain points.
A good question now that we've been using is, now that we know this is going to end at the end of December, and then, so, I asked him, like, so what's your plan? You realize that the moratorium is going to end December 31st. It's only a few months away. So what's your plan at that point? You have all of this money you owe. What's your plan? And at that point, again, they're either going to lie to your face, and then at that point, maybe they'll have an honest conversation. Well, what about if we do this? What about if we do that? All right, maybe can you start paying more? Are you working? Just open lines of communication. But I think that's a good one now. Just ask them, what's your plan to pay this 15,000 you owe plus your 1,200 a month?
Right.
Let's find out. And maybe they'll say, you know what, I can start paying 1,800 now because I just got this really good job, and and they'll appreciate it. And let them know. And if you've helped them, let them know. Listen, we've helped you. We've allowed you to stay. We, even though you owe us $15,000, you called and said that your tub was broken, and we came and we put a new, we fixed it, or we unclogged it, or we get you a new faucet. I mean, that's one thing too. My, clients of mine are like, oh, well, they owe me 15,000. Why should I fix it? Because you have to. And that's what you're supposed to do. And maybe now you can kind of use that as leverage. What are you going to do? You're going to leave and leave me stuck with this bill? You can, but maybe the next apartment you go to, maybe they're not going to treat you the way we treat you, right? So that was your leverage if you're going to treat them good throughout this process. The grass may not be greener on the other side.
True. All right, time is up. I want to thank everybody for joining, and we will be having one next month again, so please look out for it on Meetup and our email blast, and we'll have a different topic then. Everybody have a wonderful night. Anthony, thank you so much for your
Marty,
time and
thank you, man.
expertise and
Really
knowledge.
appreciate it.
You
Thank you.
got it. You got it. Thank you, everyone.